Okay, let's take a look at some of the storm that's happening right now. This is obviously Hurricane Laura, and here's the aftermath. This is in Texas. This is Crystal Beach, Texas. You can see streets are flooded. Obviously, cars are floating in streets. The storm surge was the biggest concern before Laura hit, and now we are seeing why people were so concerned. There's mass flooding, even in Texas. And by the way, it made landfall in Cameron, Louisiana. So not even Texas, but you can just see all of the bands and the aftermath, even as far away as Crystal Beach. So joining us now is Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. Governor, thank you so much for being here. We know it's a busy morning for you, so give us a status report of how Eastern Texas is doing, how many people had to be evacuated, any deaths, anything like that.
Listen, the good news right now is the early reports are that there were no deaths, and one reason for that is because people did heed the warnings to evacuate. You mentioned the storm surge, and the storm surge and the powerful winds could have led to catastrophic deaths. And because we had well over 5, maybe 10,000 people who evacuated, we no doubt saved lives because of those evacuations. Right now, we have search and rescue teams that are already going throughout the entire area to see if there is anybody who does need some type of assistance with the level of water that you're talking about, especially in the Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Orange areas that were the closest to the Louisiana border that could have faced the hardest brunt of the storm. We're very concerned there. But also, if you go further up in Texas, in northeast Texas, the hurricane is still going through that process. I think it may still be a Category 2 hurricane. And so there's powerful winds knocking down very tall trees in East Texas, as well as potential tornado activity. So people in northeast Texas still need to remain very vigilant right now.
I don't know if you can see a screen, if you have access to it, but we're looking at aerial pictures of Crystal Beach, Texas, and it's flooded. I mean, just, tons of water all around, cars and homes. Any sense of when emergency workers are going to be able to check if anybody's trapped there?
So those emergency workers are on the ground and operating as we speak right now. And they're going through all of those areas, making assessments about what that flooding damage is, but also whether or not anybody needs to be rescued from that flooding.
I can only imagine how much this complicates whatever was happening with coronavirus. I mean, obviously, Texas has been hit hard by COVID-19, as so many states were. So having to evacuate between 5,000 and 10,000 people, how does that work when you're trying to keep people distant and not spread COVID-19?
Believe it or not, this is our second hurricane during COVID-19. We had one last month that came into Corpus Christi and went all the way down to the Rio Grande Valley with very heavy flooding there. And we learned at that time new strategies to use in evacuations, for example, and that is as opposed to evacuating people to large convention centers and things like that, we try to put as many as possible into hotel rooms so that families can isolate together so that they are not in a congregate setting spreading COVID-19. It worked very well in the aftermath of Hurricane Hanna because several weeks after Hurricane Hanna, the number of people testing positive for COVID-19 and the hospitalizations for COVID-19 actually declined. And we're hoping everybody here continue to follow the safe standards of wearing a mask, sanitizing your hands, as well as maintaining your distance. If they were able to do that, I have no doubt that we will be able to continue to contain COVID-19.
And let me just give everybody a little bit of a status report on what's happening with COVID-19 in your state. Cases peaked sometime in late June, and then since then, you've been steadily ticking down. But in the past week, it looks like you've ticked up a bit, not only in cases, but in the positivity rate as well. We have a graph for that. So what's going on?
Well, first, I will tell you with the positivity rate, that is compromised a little bit by some outdated test results that have come in. The main thing to look at is the number of people hospitalized for COVID-19, and we've had a steady decline since July the 27th in the number of people hospitalized, and we have the lowest number of people hospitalized now since early June, and that includes people in ICU units. And so the health situation for people who've tested positive for COVID-19 continues to improve.
President Trump is speaking tonight at the RNC. What do you expect him to say about coronavirus?
Yeah, I'll be candid with you because I've been literally working around the clock on the hurricane. I haven't had a chance to tune into anything concerning politics. My focus right now is making sure we do everything possible to save lives, to continue these rescue operations. And I have no doubt that I'll be talking to the president because I know that he's very concerned about the status of what happened on the ground here in Texas.
You haven't watched a single night of the RNC, you're saying?
I've been watching the hurricane as it's approaching. So one reason why we had such good results in dealing with the hurricane is because we work a week in advance, around the clock, pre-positioning the National Guard, what's called Texas Task Force 1 and 2 that engage in search and rescue operations, as well as we added 1,000 Department of Public Safety officers into the region, especially the region where people evacuated from, because we want to get in there and make sure we both prevent looting, but also stabilize the communities so that we can minimize both the loss of life as well as the damages that may have occurred.
Given all that, do you think that President Trump should postpone his speech tonight, given what's happening in Louisiana and Texas?
I think it will continue on as planned, and I think he will give a terrific speech.
Governor Greg Abbott, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for giving us a status report on all of this.